Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 Self-Advocacy Conference. Self-Advocates Creating a Better Future. I want to begin by thanking everyone for joining us on a Saturday morning. I know that Saturdays are your guys' day off, and just thank you for spending the day with us. Hopefully, we have a great day of learning about the self-advocacy movement. Great day of learning from our presenters. Um, I want this to be an open discussion. So hopefully your presenters will give you guys an opportunity to talk and share your ideas as you learn from them and we learn from you. So thank you guys for joining us. It is going to be a conference from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Um, I encourage you to please stay for all our great presenters. And at the end, we will also ask some of the self-advocacy groups from here in Arizona to give a little brief discussion about who they are, what they do, when they meet, and how you can join them. Because part of the self-advocacy movement uh, includes self-advocacy groups, and self-advocacy groups have done some really good stuff throughout the history of our disability movement. So yeah, I encourage you to stay toward the end and see if you can join them and be part of the movement. All right, with that said, um, this morning I want to begin by having a talk about the self-advocacy movement, where it is, where is it going, what are some of the issues that people with disabilities face, and what can we do about it? I've invited a panel of self-advocates from around the country. The self-advocates are part of a nationwide self-advocacy organization um, called the Self-Advocacy Resource and Technical Assistance Center, also known as SARTAC, SARTAC. Now, our members are strong self-advocates from their respected states, but they also do a lot of stuff nationally, and they are in tune with what's going on with people with disabilities and what are some of the issues that they face. So I'd like to ask them some questions about where they see the self-advocacy movement going. Our panelists include Nicole Patterson from Sacramento, California, Emmanuel Jenkins from Greenwood, Delaware, and Julian Wang from Fort Collins, Colorado. Awesome. So before we get into talking about the self-advocacy movement, I'd like to set a little uh, ground as to what we mean by the self-advocacy movement. As many of you guys may know, the self-advocacy movement is part of the many civil rights movements that have happened here in the United States and throughout the world. Just as we had the civil rights movements for, African Americans or Native Americans or women, um, there was, or there has been, and there continues to be the civil rights movement for people with disabilities. We've had strong self-advocates in the independent living movement like Ed Roberts and Judy Heumann. And we also have some very strong self-advocates in what we call the self-advocacy movement. The self-advocacy movement started in the 1950s and 60s, but it really took off here in the United States in the 1970s, including what was known as the People First movement, or the People First groups. That was when a group of people with disabilities, with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, got together and said, we are more than just our disabilities. We want to be seen as people first. And they focused on advocating for themselves and advocating for for others and teaching people how to advocate for themselves. That advocacy has led to a lot of changes in laws that have really had a positive effect on people with disabilities, including the Americans with Disabilities Act and fighting for their rights all the way to the Supreme Court in things like the Homestead Act or the Homestead Act. So with that, I want to turn it over to our panelists, and I want to know from them, what does the self-advocacy movement mean to them? So my first question to the group is just that, and I'll start with Nicole. Nicole, what does the self-advocacy movement mean to you?
Self-advocacy movement for me means that we are living our best lives and helping others to do the same. And that would include state, national, and even international, depending on what your role is. And also, it's important, self-advocacy is important because we have to keep what we have and keep our momentum moving forward. And so that's what advocacy means to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Emmanuel, what does the movement mean to you?
It really means to me to continue to fight for the rights of people with disabilities while keeping in mind the work that was done before, as you mentioned, Judy Human. But even in that, you have people from the Black Panther movement who was part of the sit-ins for the disability self-advocacy movement and really using their legacy that they left behind as the building blocks for the future of the self advocacy movement, and it's such an honor to be such so involved in such a movement. But really making sure that individuals that are even not here today, I noticed that we have 45 people on in total, but I'm also thinking about the people that are not here yet that don't know anything about the self advocacy movement. So really, it's a privilege to be a part of such a movement.
It is definitely a privilege to continue that work. Julian, what about you? What does the self-advocacy movement mean to you?
Um, so my view on the self-advocacy movement could be very different to a lot of them. I do agree that with everybody here is great with that ability to do things, with what you can do and how you speak up for your rights. But I think the biggest thing is the self-advocacy movement is speaking up for yourselves, not just for the groups that you are part of, but culturally, wherever you are from, where the areas of influence that we all have that we can speak up for. But I also would also say that this great thing called life is very complex, and we need things like a circles of support group or other kinds of supported decision making or other tools to allow us to speak up for us. And through the self advocacy movement and all the research that has been out there, has helped people with disabilities form that ability to speak up for themselves. And I think sometimes we forget that tools or things that people use to speak up for themselves, both one-to-one to internationally to other things are key to the self-advocacy movement. And it's all great things to do. Thank you.
You guys are all from different states. As I mentioned, we have Colorado and Delaware and California. And the self-advocacy movement, it can be strong in some states, weaker in some states. So it's very different in all throughout the country. In Arizona here, we're working on getting self-advocates involved and getting people involved and making sure that they're advocating for their rights. So my question to you is, what is the current status of the self-advocacy movement in your state? Are there self-advocacy groups? Are they meeting? Are people, continuing that fight? Again, I'll start with Nicole. Nicole, what's going on with the self-advocacy movement in California?
So, California has a system in place that serves people with developmental disabilities. And the way the system is set up is that we have 21 regional centers throughout the state. And then we have a state department that oversees those agencies. And those 21 regional centers provide services and supports, and also supports advocacy within the local areas to folks with disabilities. We currently have about 135 groups across California. Some are more active than others, and that's where the regional centers come in when they're losing members, or if they're needing a little bit of extra support in recruiting for members. The regional center is charged to offer that facilitation or support to that self-advocacy group. And then also we have a state organization called People First of California that kind of has members from as many of those local self-advocacy groups to put together 2 conferences a year to bring all the people together as one state and work on statewide issues.
That's a big state, so there is a lot of regional support there. Emmanuel, what's going on with the self-advocacy movement in Delaware?
Yeah, so in Delaware, we have a total of 3 counties. Our whole state is 3 counties.
That's
So
pretty.
we're a little smaller. But as far as the movement, groups are still meeting. Groups are still gathering, really focusing on what's going on around the country, but also what's happening in our own state. Such as bills like HB 140 here in Delaware, which is a assistive suicide bill. So we are, groups are fighting for that, but we're also seeing the level of fear from our local groups because of the federal climate and situations there. But we continue to we that have been around for a while, a little bit more seasoned, we continue to support them and show them why it's important, even in the middle of what we consider a crisis, to be vocal and to be to be involved, and level of involvement looks different for each individual person in the movement. So you may not be someone who goes to legislative hall, or you may not be someone to testify on Capitol Hill in your local area and things of that nature. But you know, even in Delaware, we're coming up with different ways. I think the movement has changed so much that we now have to come up with different ways of advocating. Before it was, you know, getting out and knocking on legislators' doors, and which is still highly encouraged. But we also have the power of social media, good, you know, good and bad. So now we're really starting to teach self-advocacy about the power of messaging and the power of storytelling. No matter what issue we're talking about, we know that stories are the driving force behind having someone think differently about people with disabilities and understanding the importance of our lives, and our lives matter as well as anybody else. So in Delaware, we're starting to really continue the power of storytelling. And then Julian mentioned cultural, you know, even the culture of self-advocacy in Delaware is starting to change because we're, you know, the disability community is one of the only groups that accepts all people at any given moment in your life. You could be quote unquote normal, and I'm not even a fan of that word normal, one day, and then the next day you now have a different thing to challenge you. So we're really starting to embrace not only the culture of the movement, but culture of everyone in the movement. Because with your culture, your perspective on the movement, your perspective on disability in general, is different. So the movement is really starting to embrace those different cultures, those different backgrounds, to make sure that it's fully inclusive.
That's really good, especially when you talk about storytelling and embracing everybody for their culture. Um, Julian, tell us a little bit about the self-advocacy movement in Colorado. I mean, are you guys meeting, or are the self-advocates getting involved? What's going on there?
Hi everyone. So we in Colorado we have about 8 to 9 groups that are meeting. Some of them took a break from COVID and have not been as active. And there's like about 4 or 5, maybe 6 chapters that are very active in their own areas trying to figure out things. Some groups are more social, some groups are more active in the political space of advocacy and being at the Capitol. Some people are doing projects and things like that. Some of the groups are doing their own thing that makes them better. You know, there's so many things that we can talk about, and we can spend a lot of time doing that. But I think the biggest struggle was, when did we transition into using Zoom and other technology spaces was very crucial. But I feel like sometimes we forget that you need sometimes a outlier person that has experience in technology or whatever, or some other person to wake you up and say, hey, you know, let's start using Zoom or other parts of social media or Facebook or whatever, you know, being into the thing. And sometimes that's great, sometimes not. And during it was sort of funny. I ended up help run self advocacy group, my local self advocacy group, and then statewide group. right around COVID, and I was already doing a lot of meetings and doing a lot of other things. So I ended up helping out getting that transition somewhat faster than some a lot of the other groups going. We went through the struggles of that. Right now we're just trying to figure out who we are and what do we do, but our next goal, and this is where my thoughts are converging again, is sometimes you do need like everybody's view on the self-advocacy movement might be different. Some more fun and whatever. Some people are like, all right, let's get down to work, let's get stuff done, let's go and get that bill passed. Or there might be issues with your advisors or some other thing, or there's just, there's so much challenge. But I think my biggest thing is, if you're already in a self-advocacy group, I would encourage everybody that is leading or being part of a group that's on this conference, and those that are not, dump your guys' self-advocacy group names and stuff like that in the chat for those so they can start looking you guys up and start getting to know you, start building those relationships. Because if it wasn't for a parent that of our self-advocacy group a long time ago, I would have not been part of the self-advocacy movement in the same way that a lot of my current peers on the panel are. A lot of my head was still in the Special Olympics space, and that's great if you like Special Olympics and doing advocacy through them. But the self-advocacy movement is so much broader. We touch on not just sports. We deal with life and things like that. So I think that would be great. So I think for you guys, I would encourage you all to go beyond the skills of just advocating for one comfortable thing. Sort of getting, I would start thinking about your top 2 or 3 issues or things that you want to advocate about and what those issues are. If not, I would encourage advisors and other folks that are seasoned veterans that are still thinking about other self-advocates, to help them figure out what that issue or seasoned issue is. We had to do that with some folks. It took a while, but we got there in the end, and that's okay.
So Julian, you talked a little bit about, getting involved on the issues and things like that. So that's a perfect lead into our next question that I have for you guys. Um, states are different. We all face different issues, but we also face some of the same issues when it comes nationally. So with that question, or with that in mind, the next question that I have is, what are some of the threats or issues that self-advocates are facing in your state or nationally or both? So let us know what are some of the things that you guys are facing, um, as I said, in the state or nationally. Nicole, you want to let us know what's going on in California?
Well, unfortunately, California as a state is being hit with a lot of budget cuts on our state level. Just recently, we've had the May revise, and there was a lot in there in regards to disability services, not just in the DD community, but like um, elderly and other disabilities, as far as IHSS and Medi-Cal, of course, and and then we haven't even touched quite yet how the federal government is going to affect us even more on top of the situation that we're in currently with the budget. Uh, and then also, we are facing some issues too in regards to finding people to work in our field because since COVID, um, working remote has become the new thing. And people really don't want to have to take a job that they have to show up to when they can have the option to work from home or work from wherever they are. Um, so we have launched a campaign to try to encourage people to want to work in our service system, and also to back that up with wages and different things, and then also expanding our service system to where we can do some things a little cheaper and really expand on that dollar. So those are some of the struggles that we're facing in California.
Nice. Emmanuel, what's going on in Delaware? What are some of the issues and threats you guys are facing, or nationally?
So I'll start with Delaware. In Delaware, we are um our Delaware delegation, so meaning our senator and our Congress reps are pretty strong. But we have a brand new governor who just passed his 100-day mark not too long ago. So we are dealing with, as I mentioned at the top, HB 140 in our state, which is the assistive suicide bill. So a lot of advocacy groups were really fighting to not have that go through. We've been fighting it for the last 10 years or more, every single session. And we were able to stop it until this last last legislation session. It did go through, and the governor does plan to sign it. However, even with the governor planning to sign it next week, we are still advocating because we know that once the bill passes, there is going to be regulations. So now we want to shift our advocacy to ensure that the regulations, meaning the rules of said bill, has all the rules to protect people with disabilities um, uh, in the regulation. So even though to some people they say, "Oh well, we didn't win, we lost." I'm a firm believer that you don't lose unless you quit. And the movement things happen really, really quickly. We're starting to see it we've been seeing it the last 100 days on the national level. Things happen pretty fast. But we continue to fight for those regulations and make sure those regulations are strong. Now, on the national level, as someone who served on the president's committee for those with intellectual disabilities, being appointed by President Joe Biden, on the national level, we continue to, Nicole mentioned Medicaid and wages and that's what we're fighting. I think we're gonna be fighting for that, and that's why the movement, not just me, not just Nicole, not just Julian, but that's why the movement is going to take all of us to continue to advocate for that and really fight for wages for individuals. We need people. We want people, but we really need people to join our workforce, especially DSPs, direct care professionals, service providers. We need them, but we also need them to receive fair wages. just like people with disabilities. We fought for the closure of 14, 14 seat certificates, and I understand that's not in every state, but that's starting to become a national movement because somebody finally woke up and said, hey, people with disabilities need to get paid for their work and their experience and their skills and their knowledge and not just pennies on a dollar. So the national movement, even though I'm no longer on that committee because it was disbanded by the new administration. However, I still continue to fight for those national rights, if you will, for lack of better words, to make sure that people with disabilities are included in the sense and really being recognized for who we are and what we have to offer to the table. And a lot of our experiences, you can't go learning at a college, you can't go learning at a university. Life experiences is something that is unvalued in this country. And I continue to make sure that those life experiences are really gaining us credit for what we know and what we have the ability to do.
That is a lot. Um, Julian, what's going on in Colorado? What are some of the threats that you guys see? What are some of the issues that you guys are dealing with? And also if you want to add anything on the national level, I know Nicole and Emmanuel have covered a lot, but what's your perspective?
So, I think the biggest thing is, of course, Medicaid cuts, budget cuts. Everywhere, we're all going to be dealing with that at some form or somehow. Each state has a drastic shortfall in funding and things like that. But a lot of these different issues or things like the USAID centers, the DD councils, um, your family centers, like any kind of federal funding right now is just, I would say it's up for grabs. And that's sort of sad right now that that's the case, but that's for those that have fought through when we did this in 2017-18, when this first happened the first time around, we fought very unanimously. We had plenty of people showing up. So I encourage you, if you're ever aware of your local representatives, both federally and statewide, to be at the town hall, share your information, and then be around and be available whenever you can. I will also say this is just there's a lot of great conferences outside the walls of Arizona and things like that that can also, if you guys are ever like thinking about next year or other ways to share what you guys have in the learnings. Also, if you guys are looking at your guys' self-advocacy group, ways to save some money to put something for a bigger cause. Um, the on the national level, the ARCs and a bunch of 6 other self-advocacy groups and things do this thing called Disability Policy Seminar, and it's in Washington D.C. around March-ish / April. Actually, it's April. And that's a great opportunity for self-advocates to learn what are the national levels, get speaking tips, and go and speak to their um, legislators on the issues and sort of give their opinion to that. That doesn't mean it's going to happen all the time. You may meet with an aide, you might meet with the actual legislator yourself. In the last, I don't know how many years I've been or gone, every year we're saying, where are the self-advocates? Where are the self-advocates? And the biggest issue is money and funding. So I know it's already May. Why don't you guys start saving for next year and start coming I would love to hear that from other people who've gone, oh, there's a big Arizona contingent. Um, and that would be great. Um, oh, it's easier for a lot of the states on the west side or on the East Coast to be able to go up there because it's like a drive. For us, it's a flight and we have to go. Um, and then I will also say, for those that are struggling, wanting to learn about the national issues or issues that are contingent to uh, the world of self advocacy for the next year or so, please come and join the StarTech self advocacy Zoom meetings on Thursday. Um, go onto the Self Advocacy Resource Center website and join via the newsletter. If not, reach out to Juliana and George. They can also help you with that too. They know who to contact. Because this summer we have some fun and informative and out of the box resources. And after the um I'll be coming to go and dump the list of topics that they're going to be talking about, so you guys can look into that and get excited. Because we keep saying we have a lot of people from the East Coast, but not many people from the West Coast. I know it's early in the morning, but um, we have a girl that's from Hawaii and she makes it every Thursday. So that's some commitment there. So we need some more Arizonians. Get some spice. So um yeah, so I hope that you guys can learn those topics. Thank you.
And we'll be putting the information about the self-advocacy info website where you can find out more about those weekly meetings on Thursday in the chat section there. Juliana, if you could look up self-advocacy info and put it up on there. It's part of the SARTEC group that or SARTEC program that we have. Okay. Oh, Julian beat me to it. Okay. I know that Julian, you've covered a little bit about it, and you all have covered a little bit about this already, but my next question is maybe you guys can give us some examples of how self-advocates have been getting involved in your state to respond to some of these issues or threats that we as people with disabilities face. So what are some things that you have seen that have worked? Nicole, do you want to give us maybe some examples of what's going on in California, advocacy wise?
So, Julian touched on this on one of the questions. Our self-advocacy groups are large in range as far as what they do or what they focus on. We have women groups that focus on women issues. We have, whether if it's, advocating for mammograms or women's health or keeping the rights that we currently have. And then we also have groups that are heavily political, everything political they're involved in. We also have groups that are very social, and that's their form of socializing. And then we have a unique group that's coming up in the ranks, and there's been a couple across California where people first groups are starting podcasts, and most of them are younger folks. And I'm really trying to encourage some of our older people first groups to kind of tap into the the technology so that we could reach more people across the state and also nationally. Um, Really, I just want to tell folks, if you can't find a group to get involved in, start your own. The more the merrier. Um, make sure that you know what you want your group uh, to be and stand by that, and stay focused, keep energized, because we're uh, we're headed for some rough roads. And I know we don't talk about those things a lot, uh, but we are headed for some rough roads. And so we need as many people possible across the country and maybe even internationally to join forces to help people understand that we're not going backwards. I think politically wise, I think people might feel like it's cheaper to go back to um, congregate settings and service as a mass. Um, but we need to be just as loud as any other civil rights movement, especially now. And I just really, really, really encourage folks, if you're not involved yet, find someone to get involved with, because we're going to need it. We're going to need it for the, for the duration of time at this point in time, because we've already lost a lot. And don't become complacent. Don't wait on your parents. Don't wait on your support staff. Don't. This is our fight, and we need to lead it. And just get out there. Don't be afraid. Get out there. Reach out to some of us if you're wanting to do something and you just don't know how to get started. Reach out to one of us. I'm gonna drop my email in the chat. Feel free to email me with questions or concerns or anything like that. Use us as a support to you and others in your state.
Oh, wow. Man, starting a podcast would be cool. That's what we need in Arizona. We need some podcasts going on. Emmanuel, you wanna tell me a little bit about some of the how self-advocates have responded into the threats that we have faced in your state? So you want to give us some examples of what you guys have been up to?
Yeah, what we have been doing is really continuing to uh some people write letters. We do have a couple podcasts here in Delaware. But really finding whatever way to get involved, and I know Nicole touched on this as well. I think it's not so much about what we're doing, but it's also about letting people know that you may not be one of the people who go to Capitol Hill, who may not testify in front of a legislator, but whatever your skill set is. If I'm sure if I were to ask how many people were creative with posters, that's a skill that can be used in the movement. How many people are good on the telephone? That's a skill in the movement. How many people are good with rallying people up or keeping track of a meeting or finding a meeting location? All of those skills are useful, and I think sometimes when we attend conferences like this, sometimes because when I started, I would hear people on the panel and I would get intimidated. And I realized that and within my intimidation, or with me being intimidated, that was keeping me from doing what needed to be done. I realized that I can join the fight at any given moment using any skill set that I got. Maybe you are a good singer. Maybe you're the one in the group to keep everybody focused when times get rough. We need all of that. This is why the Judy Human and the Black Panthers and so many others. That's why they work well, because what one person couldn't do, somebody else did it. Even in Judy Human's book, she shared um how the Black Panthers are organized, bringing meals as they did the sit-in. I'm not a cooker at all, but I know how to eat. So my point is that we need all of those skills to join this movement and again, to Nicole's point, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody. We need whoever. We need all of you. This movement, not only this movement, but 10 years down the road. When I'm ready to kind of sit back and slow down, I need to know that the years that I put in, the years of the Americans with Disabilities, which I believe is 35, 36, somewhere around there. I need to know that that movement is going to be protected. How is it going to be protected? It's going to be protected by every last individual on this group. So if you're not involved and you're not sure how to get involved, maybe you just want to go to a meeting and not say anything. Go to the meeting and just sit there. Start to absorb the knowledge. Sometimes we think about advocacy groups and we're like, well, if I go, then that means I got to protest, or that means I got to speak, or that means I got to be ready to fight. The first fight is you showing up, because we know that it takes work to get dressed in the morning. A lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us have to depend on somebody else to get us dressed, somebody else to give us a drink out of the fridge. We know the energy that it takes. So the fight begins the minute you say, I want to go to this meeting. My last thing I'll say is, remember, whatever your skill set is, and maybe you might not even know what the skill set is, but I guarantee you, if you start surrounding yourself around people that see something in you that you don't see in yourself yet, because I'm sure it happened to all of us on this panel. Somebody saw something that we didn't see. But when we discovered it, we said, hold on, I can do something with this. I would have never thought that I would be appointed by the previous president of this country. Why? Because where I grew up, people like me didn't get those opportunities. What I'm saying is, don't wait. I think Nicole kept saying it. Do it now. The time is now. We can't afford to wait. We already lost. We already lost some valuable time. But don't worry about yesterday. Focus on today and let's get moving.
The first fight is showing up. Somebody put that on a t-shirt. All right. Julian, we got about 3 minutes left. So I'm gonna let you have the final word on, just giving us an example of what self-advocates can do, whatever you guys been up to in your state, and just wrap it up. No pressure.
Oh, there's pressure. Whatever, George. I'm just kidding. We have to have some fun. Self-advocacy has fun, but there's a time and place of work. But here's the thing. If you have not heard about the self-advocacy movement or have not seen anything about the self-advocacy movement, I encourage you to watch movies like Crip Camp and other things like that, because that's a lot of the founding principles of what the self-advocacy movement is. We speak up for what we want. But also, I want to ask all of you this. I have three things to ask. The first part is write letters to Congress, write letters to government. The next thing, be on those committees or things that are wherever you are going to be at. I want you to start thinking about issues or things that you might want to be on. Could it be transportation? Could it be housing? Could it be your services community? Whatever opportunity there's a committee, sit on those because your voice needs to be heard and we need to be at the table. If we're not at the table, what's the point of us meeting? I'm not trying to say be rude about it, but I'm just saying it how it is. And then, as Emmanuel said, show up. Now, those that have shown up and kept showing up, now it's your turn to pass the torch to the new people by feeding or giving information that is given. So when we talk at SARTAC as an advisory group and other places like that, we talk about those issues. We share information. Not everyone's going to think the right way, but it makes it better and greater. And then also, I'm going to also say this: if you hear of any fellowship opportunities, or any other project opportunities in your area, offer the take a look at them, see if they work. If not, pass them on to the next person. We need your voice. And a lot of folks, we sort of forget, we need disabled voices in our research right now because the research is going to be what's going to lead to the information that we need so the government can have it. But the other thing is the self-advocacy movement also needs to do its own research because we need to go and find out information so we can provide that to governors or committees or things like that. So that's the other thing. Now, the last and final thing. Let's all find a buddy or a friend to invite to your next self-advocacy meeting. I would love to hear that you guys are outgrowing or meeting spaces or doing things like that. All right, for supporters, I would like you all to find a way for your to push or strengthen your self-advocacy groups. It could be training, it could be is providing issues, guiding and pushing. There was I missed this conversation on Thursday on the Star Trek meeting, but there was a great presentation on how to bring up fellow and new self advocates into self advocacy movement. It's so crucial right now. I wish I had that. So I think we just need to figure out how do we use the voices in this room and just go and enjoy it. This is going to be a long slug, unfortunately, but here's the thing. Congress and the government have all done late hours. We can do late hours too. We just need to hold each other up. All right. So,
All right.
so thanks to my panelists and friends.
Well, thank you, panelists, for sharing that information with us, and thank you for letting us know what's going on in your state and nationally, and how you guys can how we can all make a difference. I believe there was a person that said if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So make sure that you're involved.